Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In the previous video we learned about the window object, the document object, and we also covered a brief introduction on the document object model. So let us go back to the console first to understand what actually the document object holds for us to take leverage of. So what I will do is, in the console I will write console.dir and document, press enter. Now let us see the structure of the document object. Now you can see we are getting a bunch of properties, and most of these properties would never matter to you. Now let us clear the console and also type in the window here. So let me clear the console. I will say clear. Okay, so console was cleared. Now what I will do is I will type window. So I'll say window, press enter. Now this will give you access to the window object. Now this is the real global object that will basically give you access to all of the core APIs that the browser wants to give access to you. Whatever code you write in your JavaScript file is available directly on the window. So if you are trying to make an alert using the alert method, this would also work if we write window.alert. So what I will do is I will simply say window. On the window we have alert, or we can directly implicitly imply. So if we don't write window.alert, it is implied that this alert method exists on the global object window. Hey there, press enter, and you can see the output comes out as alert box pops up and it says hey there. Okay, so now moving on, whatever code you are writing in the JavaScript file is directly available in your window. So if you are trying to make an access using alert like I showed you, this does work. Now let us keep the momentum rolling and understand how we can actually interact with the DOM. So back in my editor, let us write some code. So what I will do is I will remove these lines, and let us write some HTML code. Just a little bit of HTML we will write, and then we will understand what is actually going under the hood. So I will define a header tag. So header, and here I will say h1 understanding the document and window. So I will say understanding the DOM. Now after this header tag, I will introduce a main tag. In the main tag, what I will do is I will write what the JavaScript DOM actually looks like. Okay, now let us go over it in detail. So consider this HTML code, which in the end will render this very simple HTML over the browser. So what browser does in this case is it renders all the pixels, but it also parses all the HTML code. We discussed about this in the previous video, that it basically downloads the entire code and then goes over it, basically parses all the HTML code, and then it creates an object representation of that code, because under the hood the browser doesn't work with hex, which HTML in the end is. Okay, but with these objects that are stored in memory. For example, the HTML tag in the end, this HTML tag in the end is translated to an HTML node, which is an element node to be precise, because in the end these objects are simply called nodes. Now this head tag will also get transformed to a node. Then meta tags are transformed into nodes. So these all nodes are itself called as objects, or simply called as an HTML element representation. Now such element nodes are created for all your HTML elements that you can see in the simple HTML page. Now these tags you can see are indented to different levels. Okay, so this is at the topmost level, and the reason behind this is that in the browser it basically forms a tree of elements. So you have certain nestings defined over it. These elements have a certain relationship to the elements that are holding them. So what will happen is that the browser will create a tree of elements, or a tree of nodes to be precise, and in this tree of nodes, the HTML node is the topmost node. It has a head and a body as the child nodes. Now the head node then has some meta tags and then a title tag as well. Now this title tag is basically a child node of your head tag, and the body has a header, as you can see, as the child node. Then within the header we have a h1 tag, that is the child node of header, or you can say the grandchild of the body tag. So these are the relationships that you're trying to depict using the HTML DOM tree. Okay, so moving on, the relation that you see in the code is reflected in the actual DOM tree that gets created. The browser keeps track of the parent-child relations that you have with different HTML elements, and it does keep track of this by creating such a node tree. Important to understand is that not just HTML elements are created as object, also all the text that you have, that you can see here, we have some text nodes here. Understanding the DOM, even this is a text node. Understanding document object, and what the JavaScript DOM actually looks like. These are text nodes. Okay, now all these text nodes that you can see, so there's something called as the text nodes. The HTML elements, they are created as objects. Also all the text you can see here are created as something called as text nodes that I just told you. The empty space that you can see before these tags are also transformed to a node in the end in the browser. So these empty spaces that you have, this itself represents some node in the browser. Most of the white spaces are not actually rendered, but in the end it is also a part of the HTML DOM tree that gets rendered. But of course the normal text is also a part of the DOM. So these are something part of the text nodes though, and these are different types of nodes. So the different type of nodes that I want to discuss in this video is element nodes and text nodes. So element nodes for all the elements that you have. A header element will denote a header node, like then we have the main element, then p element, body element. All these elements itself form an element node for themselves in the DOM representation or in the node tree. Now the text nodes, which are stored as objects and hold the text that is included in your element nodes, so to say, with its own set of properties and different methods. So this is how our HTML code will be rendered by the browser. To get a feeling of what the browser renders, let us check the element tab of the browser. So coming back to the browser, you can see that the elements tab, the browser, and here you can see we have a HTML tag. Some indentation is provided. Then within the HTML tag you have the head tag. In the head tag, if I open, we have some meta tags that are nested within the head tag, and these are sibling elements. Now the body tag is sitting at the very same level where the head is sitting. So these are also sibling elements, and they are nested within the HTML element. So this is the relationship that I'm trying to depict here. And you can clearly see the structure of the DOM here. So you can see here the loaded HTML code here, but this is basically what the browser loaded here as the DOM. Now this is the end what browser loaded here, and this is what in the end you can interact with.